Hi, everyone. I'm Alex Usher, and this is the World of Higher Education podcast. Iran's a country with a lot of higher education stories. There's stories about students. They were a key part of the coalition that overthrew the Shah in 1979, and they were the ones who spearheaded the capture of the U.S. Embassy later that year. But since 1999, students have also been consistently and reliably at the head of all anti-government protests. Iranian universities are, as a result, the center of a great deal of physical confrontation at moments of national rebellion, such as the one that occurred in late December and early January. Or you can look at stories about institutions in science. One of the least heralded developments in global higher education in the 2010s was the emergence of Iran as a major source of scientific advance, particularly in medical sciences. Despite never having had one of those fancy excellence initiatives, scholarly output rose nearly 20-fold in the first 2 decades of the century. Equally unheralded, though, was the rapid decline in enrollments the country's seen in the 2020s, due mainly but not solely to demographic change. With me today is Saeid Golkar. He's a professor of political science at the University of Tennessee Chattanooga and a scholar of the tactics of Iran's Basij, part of Iran's Revolutionary Guard, and of social control under Iran's Islamic government. Today, we talk about all aspects of Iranian higher education, its development, its rise and fall, the degree of political control that the regime exerts over universities, and the role that students have played over time in Iran's political system. Note that this interview was conducted on February 20th, 8 days before the joint Israeli-American airstrikes on Tehran and other Iranian sites, and thus some of the conversation doesn't quite reflect the current situation in the country. But without further ado, over to Saeid. Saeid, let's start by setting the scene a little bit. What does the higher education system look like in Iran today? Does it have lots of big multidisciplinary institutions, like sort of American flagship institutions, or is it one of those countries that has lots of small specialized institutions?
Very good question. Actually, your higher education system is large, but uneven and, more importantly, politically shaped. At the top, we have a small group of the flagship public universities, mostly in the major cities. They are very selective and they are very prestigious, like Tehran University, for example. Alongside of them, we have the specialized institution in engineering, sometimes in medicine, with a link with the state and the job market. But at the core of the system is Iran higher education divided to two main groups. The medical education is run through the Ministry of Health and Medical Education. So all of the medical education is under control of that. And every other university is under control of the Ministry of Science and Technology. Beside of these state flagship prestigious universities, we have the Azad University. Azad University is a semi-private universities spread throughout Iran, trying to recruit the people who are not able to go to the state universities. And so it's a tuition-based system. All of these universities is under control of either the Ministry of Medical Health and Medical Education or Ministry of Science Education. And there is one unelected body at the top of all of this system, the Supreme Council of Cultural Revolution, who put all of the cultural, ideological planning and programming for the universities. This institution is unelected, controlled by the supreme leader. So everything in Iran is like a hierarchy coming from the supreme leader of control to the, to the lower level of the university.
Right. But there's this one very large private institution, which I think last I checked is almost a third of the entire system. And it's the Islamic Azad University. And I'm not sure how Islamic it actually is. Like we had a guest on a while ago talking about private higher education. He was sort of saying that Islamic is a misnomer there, but it did have links to the regime when it was open, because President Rafsanjani was one of the founders, as I understand it, of that organization, or at least he was president of it at one point. What is this organization? How did it grow so big?
Yes, it's the Islamic Azad University, but it's not Islamic, is not Azad because it's not free. You have to pay the tuition, and it's not Islamic because there are less, ideological control over the state, and the environment is much more open compared to the state university. Everything in Iran is controlled by the state. So regardless is a semi-private or the private, all of them are controlled by the state. they create these other Islamic universities trying to admit the students who are not able to go to the public universities. And because there was a huge demand after the 1979 revolution for the students to go to the university, and the state university is not able to answer that, they create this semi-private called Islamic Azad University.
So you talked about state control of universities, both of public and so-called private institutions. But how does that work? I mean, is Iran like Russia, where the regime effectively has a veto at the level of, selecting rectors? Like, is it that level of control, or is the control exerted through agencies like the Supreme Cultural Council that you talked about earlier?
Iran actually is much more close to the North Korea than the Russia in terms of the controlling. Iran is a proto-totalitarian regime. And I will explain how it works in Iran. Every university president should be approved by the Supreme Council of Cultural Revolution. That is controlled by the Supreme Leader. So all of these people have been picked by the Ministry of Education, Higher Education, or Ministry of Health, and then the Supreme National Cultural Revolution should approve that. In this approval comes from the top, and then the dean will pick the head of each college. In the terms of the department, there are some kind of very limited, autonomy, but that's very limited. In terms of the hiring the faculties, everything is centralized in Iran and go through a political and ideological vetting. So not everybody is able to go and teach at the universities. There are a massive ideological vetting for the postgraduate student from MA and the PhD student. There are a massive security institution like the Basij or the Harasat that is under control of the Ministry of Intelligence at the universities. So in terms of the curriculum, in terms of the even syllabus, in terms of the management, in terms of the highest faculty, in terms of admitting their student in the higher level in the PhD and master, they are controlling directly at the universities. We don't see this kind of the level of the vetting like in Russia. There are much more, autonomy in the Russian system. It's very close to the totalitarian regime that the state try to control all aspects of the education.
Interesting. Now, until about 8 years ago, higher education in Iran, I think in many ways could have been described as a pretty big success story. You had rapidly growing enrollment. You had a research output system. I mean, Iran's research output was growing faster than almost anyone else in the world. I think it was about a 20-fold increase, much of it in the medical faculties in about a 15-year period. And they did it without any kind of big excellence program, like, the 985 program in China or similar programs in Russia and Germany and Japan and elsewhere. What explains that strong performance in the first couple of decades of the century?
The strong performance in the early 2000s actually was driven by a combination of expansion of the university, giving incentive by the state, national strategies, and more importantly, from around 2000, the Islamic Republic still is a theocratic republic. It's not as personalized or securitized like right now. Mm-hmm. So, after the Iran-Iraq war ended, the Islamic Republic expanded the higher education, especially in master and PhD. And a lot of universities start a PhD program. And because of the high demand, the number of the students in the PhD and master increased. And that led to the more publication. The policymaker at that time actually tried to show the scientific production as part of their prestige. So they are encouraging everybody to publish. The promotion is linked to the publication as much as you can. So all of this actually helped Iran to expand in 2000. Iran had a very deep pool of the talented individual, especially in STEM major, that helped Iran expansion in 2000. You have to remember, this expansion in social science, humanities was not aligned with the increase of the qualities. The quantities often, matter with the quality of education, especially in social science humanities. But in pure science, in math, in STEM, we saw this expansion
Mm-hmm.
massively because the universities are expanding their postgraduate programs. There are more students going there. The state are incentivizing by giving more money and promotion to the people who are publishing. So we will see that expansion as in 2000.
And I guess that kind of that movement, that growth kind of peaked just before COVID, is my reading of the data. And things seem to have changed since around, I don't know, 2017, 2018. Enrollments have fallen quite quickly. Institutions are facing significant pressures. You've got a lot of academics leaving academia or leaving Iran entirely. Some of this, I assume, is about demography, a shrinking youth cohort. And some of it, I assume, is about the effect of sanctions and broader economic stagnation in Iran. What's your take on this? What are the really big challenges inside Iran's universities right now?
Part of the expansion of higher education in Iran happened during Ahmadinejad from 2005 to 2013. He's a populist guy, and he's coming and using the expansion of universities without thinking about the qualities as to co-opt Iranian people, to show that, every Iranian, regardless of the performance, can go to the university. From 2014, when the new government came to the power, they realized there is no quality in the most of these semi-private universities. So they're trying to cut it down, and they trying to focus on the quality. That's the first thing. So Rouhani government tried to close a lot of these universities up during the Ahmadinejad. Second, as you said, demography is the most important driver. There are less demand to go to the universities because there are shrinking of the birth rate in Iran. But more importantly, the economy is another driver too. Inflation, decline in income, change the family's culture, that the university degree is not very important anymore. You cannot get a job after you're graduating. Without any doubt, the sanction and more importantly, the mismanagement, economic mismanagement, reduced the university budget. They lost the lab. They lost. They are
Mm-hmm.
not able to give good salaries to the faculty. So that's why many of these people start to immigrate outside of the Iran, mostly in the Persian Gulf countries, because they are paying much better. We will see a very big brain drain in Iran, and the
Yeah.
COVID is important too, because turn the university to online and remote. There is inequality to access to the online education in Iran, especially because the internet is massively under the control, is not
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have a good quality. All to all, that led to the shrinking of the higher education from the 4 million students in 2017 to about 3,500,000 for 2020.
Saeed, I want to turn us now from the issue of universities to students, because I think when Iran makes the news internationally, it's very often because of things that its students are doing. If you go back to the 1979 revolution, obviously that was a mass uprising. It wasn't just students, but students were clearly active in the campaign to overthrow the Shah. And of course, they played a key role in seizing the American embassy in 1979. And that was an act that strengthened Ayatollah Khomeini's position and paved the way for Velayat-e-Faqih, which is the rule of the religious class. So at the time, were most students pro-Khomeini, or was this just a group of students who happened to be pro-Khomeini? I mean, was it the radicals who stormed the embassy almost 50 years ago now? Was that representative of student opinion at the time or not?
To be honest, the Iranian the student from 1934 that the modern university created in Iran until 1979, most of them are the leftist, Marxist, socialist. They belong to the different, group of the leftist students. The Islamist students are very a small number of the students. But when we get closer to the 1979 revolution, the Islamist students are growing up. Still, when the revolution happened, the majority of the students at the university belong to the leftist group. There are
Okay.
leftist, Marxist, liberal, nativist, third worldist, and Islamist group. The Islamic school has an advantage. Ayatollah Khomeini, the supreme leader at that time, and the state are the Islamists. And they try to control the universities, the last space that they have not been controlled. So with the pressure of the Khomeini and the new political elite, Islamist universities are able to come and take over the American embassies. At that time, there are minorities. But even at that time, the leftist students are agreed to take over the American embassy because they see it as an imperialist country.
Because being leftist, they would be very anti-American. So that strategy of confrontation with the West would be popular both with Islamists and Marxists.
Absolutely right. So seizing the American embassy was very popular for the Islamists and for the leftists. But the leftists forget, as soon as Islamists consolidate their power, they came to purge them out of the university. Through the Cultural Revolution, 1980 to 1983, more than 10,000 of the university faculty and more than 50,000 of the university students, most of them leftists and liberal or non-Islamists, have been purged from the universities.
Well, since that time, of course, students have found themselves frequently in opposition to the government. So the very large protests in July 1999, those were largely student-led. Students played prominent roles in the 2009 election protests, the 2022 Women Life Freedom protests, and those that occurred earlier this year. Why are students so consistently among the regime's most persistent critics?
Absolutely. From Samuel Huntington, with people like him, we know that the student, in dictatorship, when you open up the university, then, the people go to the university and gradually they became more informed, connected. They have a political demand. They gradually grow for the political demand. This happened in Iran too. From 1999, after 2 decades after the revolution, the number of the students at the university increased. They are connected with each other. They are educated. They are young. And now they are asking for political reform and having more political freedom. So from 1999 to 2009, a student are of the front of any protest asking for political reform and more political freedom. From 2017 to now, a student are actively involved, this time not for asking political reform, by asking dismantling of the regime or regime change. They realize that the regime is not reformable. The students are sitting intersection between the aspiration and radical idea and the blood opportunities. They go to the universities, but they are coming out, there is no job. The political repression is massive. And they are informed and connected much more than the other part of the societies. This is a time that the student will realize, okay, something is not happening. And historically, Iranian student was politically active even during the Pahlavi monarchies. From 1934 to 1979, Iranian students are fighting and challenging the Pahlavi. They were, as you said, they were very active in 1979 revolution. So there is a history and institutional memories of the student that this is a political institution. And when you are dealing with a very repressive regime that is incompetent, there is no other choice for you to start to protest.
And so tell me, how do students organize? Because you were saying earlier, the universities are pretty tightly controlled politically. I'm assuming there's not a lot of open student elections in Iran, the way you see in many countries. So how do protests get started on campus? Who organizes them? How do they, given controls on the internet and things like that, how do students manage to coordinate their actions so efficiently, not just within a single institution, but often across the entire country?
First, again, going back to the idea of totalitarian control, the Islamic Republic created a lot of student organization or association that are connected to the state, and they are working at the university to show the facade of, the civil society and non-governmental organization. Because of that, you don't see too much autonomous student organization. There are a few, but they are massively under control. And
Mhm.
that's why the student protest usually in Iran is spontaneous. The student, because they're connected through the social media and, the internet, they are able to communicate with each other. You will see a lot of a small group, dorm-based group, or a small circle of the friend that communicate with each other are coming to protest in the university campuses, and then they are attracting more and more students who are massively disappointed and dissatisfied with the regime, and they are waiting for some kind of the gathering to protest. This is a passive networking among of the students, more than the active one, because all of these active organizations are created by the state, like the Bastille Student Organization for the Islamic Association of the Student, just a few. This has some advantage because you don't have a hierarchy. The universities or the state are not able to completely destroy you by arresting the leader. But the problem is, mobilizing and organizing became very, very difficult because immediately the state shut down the internet or all of the social media, as we saw it in January 8th and January 9th. The state completely blocked any social media app. Internet was completely shut down. Even the phone service was shut down. So when you're cutting it down, then the whole SLAD organization will collapse.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much you can enlighten us about what happened in the last, 8-10 weeks, because I understand it's still difficult to get news out of Iran. But what actually happened on campuses in the January protests? My understanding is that you certainly had some conflicts on campuses, invading dormitories at places like Tehran University. How did the crackdown unfold on campuses across the country?
We have to know, based on the data that we have, more than 130 students have been killed among of 35,000 people who allegedly have been massacred in Iran since December 28th. Since December 28th, a new wave of the protest started that we call it the Great Uprising.
Mhm.
The trigger was economic problem, but as soon as the people start to come to the street, more and more people poured because they are satisfied for different reasons. Again, Iran is politically repressive, economically incompetent, culturally closed. Even there are grievances about the environment issues, water scarcity, air pollution. So there are a lot of grievances. And from December 28th, as soon as the protest started, we see the protests, a small protest at the campus around the cities. And that's why in January 8, January 9, when the regime shut down the internet and killed 35,000 Iranians, immediately they closed all of the universities. The education have turned from the physical on campus to the online remote. Right now, all of the universities, especially the big one, are turned to the online education. The exams have been turned to online education. The whole idea is trying to limit the space for the student to gather. The door was still open, but the door, as you said, many of the doors in Tehran in the big cities have been raided by the security police, and many of the students, around 1,000 of them, have been arrested in the last months, trying to keep the student quiet because they know the students are the bridge between the universities and other parts of the society.
We're recording this on February 20th, and I guess it's been 42 days since the crackdown on the 9th of January. We don't seem, or at least as far as I can tell, we haven't seen much of the pattern that we've seen in previous protest waves of the, return protests after 40 days of mourning. Is that likely not to happen with this set of protests?
Actually, the only returning to the protest after the death was in 1979,
Yeah.
during the Pahlavi, because Pahlavi was not as repressive as the Islamic Republic. Pahlavi was a patrimonial dictatorship. Islamic Republic is a modern security state. And interestingly, again, we are seeing what we call the fourth day protest. And in Islamic tradition, the fourth day after the death of your beloved one is the last day that you are get together and mourning for that. And for the few days, we have seen this, that in many cities, thousands of the people are coming, participating in these 4-day ceremonies and chanting against the Islamic Republic. I have worked on the political repression in Iran for 25 years, and this is the first time that I'm seeing killing 35,000 people have not silenced Iranian. For the first time, I'm seeing that the people still are chanting a slogan on the roof, on the window, behind the window, or on the street, or chanting a slogan against the Islamic Republic. This is a very interesting issue, to be honest. It seems that the repression has a turning point, that even after killing this number of the people start to think this is, we cannot be silenced anymore. So my observation from around Iran is in the last few days that the 14 days after the January 8 and 9 is coming, people are still protesting in a much bigger number, compared to the past, compared to the few years ago. And the fear is turning to the anger. And that's interesting to see, watch and see what will happen in the future. But I want to say for sure, the Islamic Republic is relying on the repression, massive repression, but these are not a stable and sustainable situation.
Right.
People will come back to the street again.
Sure. And I mean, I guess what struck me about the crackdown last month was that it sort of seems like the regime is admitting that it's no longer of regaining public favor, right? And it's now just about maintaining control for as long as possible. So if economic crisis and political illegitimacy do eventually lead to a moment of transition, maybe soon, maybe we have to wait for Ayatollah Khamenei to die. What role do you think students will play in that eventual transition? Will they act as, the instigators of the revolution, as happened in Bangladesh 2 years ago? Or will it be a broader based movement and students will be, just one group among many?
To clarify, we're seeing the student movement in Bangladesh or Generation V in Nepal, and there are a lot of discussion about that. We have to remember the Islamic Republic is not Bangladesh, is not Nepal. Islamic Republic, in my humble opinion, is one of the most repressive political system right now we are talking about. I don't talk about North Korea because there are a lot of, not clear, but compared to the China and Russia and other countries, Iran is the most repressive security-based regime. So the possibility of coming out and changing the regime is very unlikely because, as we've seen it, the Islamic Republic is able and willing to kill as much of the Iranian per se in a power. But if Khamenei die or some kind of the foreign intervention happen, or for some reason we are in a transition, I think we will see a student not maybe as a front runner of the protest, but without any doubt, a bridge between the university, between the academia, and between other groups, collaboration, like 2026, for example, or 2022. The students are part of this massive group of the people who wants to see a form of the transition from the Islamic Republic to the much more democratic, secular regime.
Saeid, thanks so much for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me.
And it just remains for me to thank our excellent producers, Sam Bufek and Tiffany McLennan, and you, our readers and listeners, for joining us. If you have any questions or comments about today's episode, or if you have suggestions for future ones, please don't hesitate to get in contact with us at podcast@higheredstrategy.com. Join us next week when our guest will be Lily Yang. She's assistant professor of education at the University of Hong Kong, and we'll be talking about her recent book, Higher Education, State and Society, Comparing the Chinese and Anglo-American Approaches. Bye for now.